Obviously, I'm hoping that there's not an invasion. Obviously, we all are. If there is, realistically, how long do you think that the Taiwanese army would last?
There are many different calculations. If it's just a blockade scenario, I think that we can still sustain for quite a while, because no matter our troops, our military still have the relatively good capabilities. And I don't think that the current Chinese PLA force can really have the effective control surrounding Taiwan. I think they don't have that kind of capabilities right now. They are preparing, but they haven't have the full capabilities to do that.
So we don't know. It depends on the scenario.
Yeah.
I'm sincerely hoping you have very well thought out plans for an insurgency.
I think that should give us courage, exposure to other people's perspectives.
Moving us in a good direction.
For those of you who aren't familiar with who you are and what you do, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Fei-fan Lin, and I was the student movement leader back in 2014, the Sunflower Movement. And I was the Deputy Secretary General for the ruling DPP for 4 years, working under President Tsai. I'm now working with President-elect Lai.
And so many people in the audience, they're not very familiar with Taiwan, but they're interested because of the geopolitical happenings now with China, et cetera. What should people in the United States know about Taiwan? Why should they care?
I think basically that Taiwan is definitely a beacon of democracy. So I believe that we share the same values, democratic values, freedom of speech, human rights, and Taiwan is actually the first country in Asia that legalized same-sex marriage. So we share a lot of common values with the US, with the others Western democracies. And to be honest, that in the economic front, that we are the most critical part of the whole supply chain, I would say. So there are many things at stake.
All right, so let's jump into it. So are you concerned with the threat from China? Are you concerned about a blockade? Are you concerned about an invasion? Are you concerned about bullying?
Yeah, of course I'm concerned. I think in our daily life, that China's threat is already becoming like a usual and common, like normal stuff. China's threat to our security, their incursion of our ADIZ or our water is actually, it happens on a daily basis. Right. Their aircraft cross the median lines also on a daily basis right now. After the Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taipei, I think they created so-called new normal. They want to change the status quo, and they never abandon their ambitions to annex Taiwan to maybe a couple of years later or in the future. So I think this is a real threat to our security and people's security, not just the national security, but also people's security. And their economic threats, economic coercion to Taiwan as well, that happens, on a daily basis. They barred our agricultural products to export to China. They sanctioned some of our industries, and I personally been sanctioned by China officially.
Can you tell me about how have you been sanctioned?
Yeah, it's actually I was sanctioned by China along with the VP-elect Bi Kim Xiao when she was the ambassador to the U.S. So I think the reason is that they, after Pelosi's visit to Taipei, they want to find some target to punish, and I become one of the members on that list.
And so there was an actual list that went around?
Yeah. They officially published that. Yeah, they officially published that.
And so what does that mean? You can't get into China? You can't travel?
I cannot get into China, but I won't. I won't visit China, but they barred me from entering China. They barred me from entering Hong Kong as well. So the whole story is that I was being barred from entering Hong Kong after 2014, but it's not an official sanction. But in 2022, after Speaker Pelosi's visits, they kind of list certain members from the DPP the DPP officials, and we become the people being sanctioned.
So I've been told repeatedly by, I think literally everybody we've had on the show, right, that once we publish these videos, I will no longer be able to go, not only get into China, but even go through China, and there will be repercussions for the YouTube channel, there'll be repercussions for me personally. Is that exaggerated?
Yes, somehow, because I didn't have any kind of assets in China, I don't have family members in China, and I have no need to go to China, and I know the dangers and risk to visit China. So I don't think that's...
And the dangers being what?
Being arrested, So and being harassed by the CCP or by the Chinese police. And there are a couple of Taiwanese people there in China right now still being under arrest and been put in jail for many years. So it's always been a risk for Taiwanese to visit China.
And if I were to, when we were in London, we met a Chinese woman in a park, and she said, I asked her about the Taiwan situation, and she said basically, through a translator, that Taiwan is a renegade province. And I think that's the narrative that they spin, this idea that, so I can't seem to find anybody here who supports unification. If I would, I'd more than happy to speak with them. Absolutely, I can't find anybody. But what is your response to Taiwan is just a renegade province?
Yeah, so Taiwan is definitely not the renegade province of China. The People's Republic of China never ruled Taiwan for a single day. Yeah. So since 1949, there was a civil war between the KMT and CCP, and there's a legacy of the Cold War, but actually the PRC never ruled Taiwan.
Okay.
Yeah. So definitely not weird. So our position is clear that Taiwan's official title, the country's official title is the Republic of China, the ROC. Well, there's a huge legacy, historical legacy of the KMT regime came to Taiwan in 1949, but the PRC and ROC are not subordinated with each other. Yeah.
How likely do you think a military conflict is between China and Taiwan? And if there is a blockade or invasion, how likely do you think it is that the United States and our allies will support Taiwan?
Yeah, the first thing is that I think from our position, it's quite clear that we want to have the capabilities to defend ourselves. And we are putting every effort to help to strengthen these capabilities. In these past 8 years, under DPP's governance, actually, the DPP administration put a lot of energy in that. We start our indigenous weapon system developments. We try to build our own submarines, and we try to build our own aircraft, and also some missile defense systems.
And you develop those indigenously as opposed to buying them because people won't sell them because they're afraid of China.
Well, some of the countries they're afraid of that selling weapons to Taiwan, indeed. But on the other hand, that we have a very good foundation for building these weapons because we have a huge defense industries in Taiwan as well. We have a very good drone industry.
Right.
We have aircraft industry domestically. So I think we have a lot of good foundation for that. So that's a reason why we try to strengthen our capabilities by ourselves, rather than just depending on other people's help. But while the United States is actually a very important critical part for, Taiwan security, that we have a very deep cooperation between the U.S. and Taiwan right now, like the security front or from the Coast Guard cooperation. I think U.S. Taiwan right now, we really it's really the point that I would say is the best relations we have right now. Between the U.S. and Taiwan.
When you say you're developing indigenous weapon systems, that does not mean nuclear, correct?
No, that does not mean nuclear. Yeah.
Because that would be a red line for China.
It's not just a red line for China. I think it's also I think international community have that kind of consensus that proliferation is kind of consensus among like international community. So from our perspective, that we need to strengthen our asymmetric capabilities. So you can see now. Taiwanese government really putting in efforts like building like small portable mobile weapon systems rather than buying or purchasing the huge or traditional weapons.
Yeah, I don't know if this is your area or not, but I was reading just this morning about cruise missiles' effect on large sea carriers. And I was reading that the United States has by and large developed weapon systems for the past 25 years for more or less for the Middle East, close combat, et cetera. And in open waters, those same systems they're just not applicable. But the idea of a blockade, it was argued, I had someone on the show who talked about drone attacks on aircraft carriers. And I was reading today about cruise missile attacks. So if there was a blockade, what kind of response militarily do you see happening, or none at all?
Well, from our side, we necessarily need to push back if there is really a blockade scenario. China want to practice that. Last time is 2022 in August after Pelosi's visit. They're trying to practice that kind of a scenario, but my understanding is that our military also trying to push back the certain efforts and to secure the channel, no matter from air or from waters, that can still be freely navigated. So I think from our side, our defense force need to push back a certain way and to secure that the supply chains can still work. And also the economy can be stable.
Yeah, I was reading something, so I don't know how familiar you are with the situation in the U.S. with the border, but the border is porous. It's basically open. Anybody can come through. And I was reading something recently about Iranian sleeper agents coming through the southern border. And it seems like a rather obvious strategy. And please don't obviously reveal any military secrets or anything, but I was just thinking that if I were trying to figure out how to deter an invasion or blockade, I would smuggle in tactical nuclear weapons and sleeper agents to Beijing and Shanghai. And the moment they said they were going to blockade, I would tell them we have 11 or whatever tactical nuclear weapons, and if you blockade, we will kill hundreds of millions of people. And the choice is entirely your own.
From our perspective, that Taiwan is always playing a very responsible role in the international community. So what we did for these 8 years, as I understand, is that we tried very hard to stabilize the regional tension and the situation. So I think that currently we won't discuss anything about like how to attack China.
But you would only, sorry to interrupt you, but you would only do that if they started a block. Like you would only tell them that once the blockade started. You wouldn't tell them that beforehand. You just sneak people in there with tactical nuclear weapons.
It's actually your idea is actually very creative, but from our no matter from the government side or at least I know from the civil society that Taiwan is a peace-loving country.
Sure.
So what we do to really build our deterrence, the current strategy we have, or the strategy that we discuss with our international partners, is actually how to build Taiwan as a porcupine.
As a what?
As a porcupine.
Okay.
The porcupine?
Porcupine, yeah.
Porcupine, sorry. So the porcupine strategy is one of the things that I think people have the consensus that for us, it's better for us to develop the defense system rather than the system to attacking the others.
So I'm not sure what the natural predator of a porcupine is, but I would imagine if you had 20 of those surrounding a porcupine, the porcupine would be in trouble. So analogously, you have a situation in which you have an aggressor, they're authoritarian and tyrannical, and you have a very real possibility that you would live under a boot, that you would live under tyranny. And to me, it seems that the response to that has to be somewhat proactive, not just in a defense capability. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. But do you know what I mean? Like if the alternative is to live under tyranny for you and your children, then I don't see how there's any other alternative but to not be a porcupine, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I think I understand what you were saying, or what you were suggesting. But from our side, I think from our national security thinking or our coordination and cooperation with the United States, I think people have the consensus that building Taiwan as a porcupine probably was the basic or the first stage for our stronger deterrence. But other strategies, to be honest, that we're not in that position to talk about that. There's a lot of infrastructure that we need to build first for this porcupine strategy. And there's many different defense systems we need, including the military reform. Our military reform, to be honest, in these 8 years, while we push forward a lot of efforts into that, but still requires a lot of new reforms. Yeah.
So how confident are you that the United States will come to the defense of Taiwan in the case of a blockade or an invasion?
Personally, I'm pretty confident about Taiwan's cooperation with the U.S. right now. Currently, I see President Biden has been reiterate his stance on defending Taiwan for more than 4 times, right? Which is quite unusual for the U.S. government to say that. In the past, no, I don't think that we have seen any other presidents of the United States say something about directly defending Taiwan. But President Biden made that commitments, or at least made that statements clearly. I think that's pretty reassuring for us. But on the other hand, I think from the tactical perspective, you see that currently that Taiwan have a very deep coordination as well on the defense or security side. And we are trying to deepening this trust. So I think no matter what strategy the U.S. will take, the most important thing for us right now, from Taiwan's perspective, is to building trust and to let the U.S. and also not just the USG, but also the American people to understand why Taiwan is so important for them. I do think so. I do think that even the American people doesn't really understand what's happening in Taiwan right now.
I'm positive
this is
that's
actually
the case.
yeah. So this is actually for me, it's a quite good honor and good opportunity to tell the American people about what Taiwanese people thinking. Yeah.
So what my impression, and I think my team shares this, is this is an astonishingly civilized place.
Yeah.
Astonishingly clean. Everybody's nice. Nobody screws me on my change. The food is incredible. It's just a remarkably civilized place. The other day I was on the bus, and I had, even though I'm Reed's Chinese teacher, my Chinese isn't perfect yet. So, I'm holding up the phone. The guy doesn't speak English, and he's like, "Just go on the bus. Just go on the bus."
Yeah.
Everybody's just so nice to me, and and it's a kind of culture of civility here that I long for. That the U.S. In many parts of the U.S. you don't see. So with that lead up, my question to you is a question that I've been thinking about, that I've asked other people on the show. It's Vivek Ramaswamy's idea of basically Taiwan adopting a Second Amendment and training everybody in firearms, distributing firearms to the citizenry in case of an invasion. What is you're looking at me like I'm crazy again. Am I just thinking about it too
to be honest,
American?
I think there's a cultural differences, I would say, and the context of our history is quite different from the one in the U.S. I think while not so many people are really talking about like having arms by the people and people can defend themselves. In Taiwan, even to be honest, even social movement is relatively peaceful. So it's very peaceful culture that you see that in Taiwan's history after democratization, even in the social movements, no one is throwing the gas bomb or something.
Right.
No one's doing that. No one's breaking the shops or something. It's totally it's a I won't say totally, but it's more like a different context, different culture.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you go to the 7-Elevens here, there's alcohol.
Yeah.
They're called nips, little alcohol, and sometimes even bigger. Open, not behind a case. Anybody can walk in. Nobody looks at you under the assumption that you're going to steal anything.
Yeah.
And a couple of nights ago, I was at the 7-Eleven, and a guy got some pasta, and he got a huge thing of whiskey that he bought at the 7-Eleven, and he's just the 7, as they say. And the 7-Elevens here also open 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there drinking his whiskey, eating his pasta, watching a video on the phone, and I just found that to be utterly extraordinary. I just found that to be an absolutely amazing experience at every level.
That's something that I found is pretty difficult for people to do like in the U.S. Like, yeah.
No, I was just flabbergasted by that. But my point in that story is I think that there's a kind of deep ingrained civility here, such that if the people were armed and firearms were readily available, I do not see this place becoming a bloodbath like my country.
To be honest, there's another concern.
Okay.
Of that. The concern I would say is that China is putting every effort to infiltrate Taiwan. They're cooperating with some local gangsters. And they're trying to co-opt those local mafias into their systems and disrupt Taiwan's security and also social order. So that's been a huge concern in Taiwan. That we have found a couple of organizations that are working with CCP. This has really been a problem of Taiwanese
now,
society.
I just want to be clear. I'm not advocating this, but I am asking you. Isn't everything you just said to me yet another reason to arm everybody in Taiwan?
I think even for the general public, people don't really think that people should arm themselves for defending ourselves.
Why?
I think in other ways that we have our military force, we have our army, we have our, there's some people who really have the expertise and really devoted into defending Taiwan. I think that's a highly professional work. But for the people side, that people are training ourselves now how to help each other. You see that there are many different organizations, NGOs, for example, Kuma Academy, for example, the Taiwan Forward Alliance. They're all the organizations are helping to build understanding of what would be look like in the war zone.
Okay.
And how to help each other, like for emergency aid, for like how to tell who is the enemy, and how to identify the environment and the situation. So we are on the stage of at this stage we are not like having a real foundation to talk about like giving people arms.
Okay, so let's have a moment here. So obviously I'm hoping that there's not an invasion. Obviously we all are. If there is, realistically, how long do you think that the Taiwanese army would last?
There are many different calculations, and that would basically depends on how you evaluate. The scenario. If it's just a black case scenario, I think that we can still sustain for quite a while, because no matter our troops, our military still have the relatively good capabilities, and I don't think that the current Chinese PLA force can really have the effective control surrounding Taiwan. I think they don't have that kind of capabilities right now. They are preparing, but they haven't have the full capabilities to do that.
So we don't know. It depends on the scenario.
Yeah.
I'm sincerely hoping you have very well thought out plans for an insurgency. Because if I were advising this government, I would say, listen, we're going to look at this and we're going to plan to have the most bloody insurgency the world has ever seen, so that every single inch of territory that the Chinese take, we will extract an incredible price for that. That's how I would be thinking.
Yeah. So we do need to let Chinese know that we will not give an inch of our sovereignty or our territory. We will definitely let them know about our stance. But on the other hand, I think currently Taiwan really needs to strengthen our capabilities and prepare. I would say that we all have the consensus that Taiwan is not fully prepared for this scenario. That people also need to understand that the possibility of this kind of situation. And we really need somehow to not so-called educate, but inform the people of what a war is look like. But we actually don't want to let people too nervous about this. Or too anxious about this. It's basically because that if you look at the current situation, well, China is preparing for their military capabilities, but they haven't really fully have that kind of capability to attack Taiwan. And
you don't think they do now?
They don't. I don't think they have the capabilities right now. Yeah. And attacking Taiwan is not just attacking the Taiwan's territory itself. They must to cut off some kind of channels between Taiwan and Japan, and also some of the channels between Taiwan and South China Sea. So it would become like they have to operate not just directly to Taiwan. They have to prepare for the whole scales of invasions around the region. That would involve Japan, Philippines, the U.S., and even Vietnam and other partners. So I don't think that they have that kind of capabilities to wage the war like that.
So in the Indo-Eastern Pacific, you see other allies in case there's increased tensions coming to the aid of Taiwan? You see the Philippines, which is named Bongo Marcos, Bong Marcos. You see the Japanese. You see other actors coming to the aid of Taiwan, or no?
Currently, that including Japan and Philippines, they all face the similar threats from CCP, from China. You see that China's incursion of our airspace or our waters. It's not just happened to Taiwan.
Right.
It also happens to Japan.
Right.
And Philippines. So we all facing that kind of pressures. So I think that the people really have that kind of understanding that we should help each other and cooperate with each other. But on the other hand, to maintain the balance that we are not provoking a war and or to heighten up tensions. So people I know from Japanese government or from the others, I think there are a bunch of people that really very responsible. So people think strategically and people think responsibly, and that's quite important. Yeah.
Huh. Are you hopeful about the situation, or
hopeful for
a peaceful maybe that China will desist, or that they'll just leave you alone, or that you're now looking at me like I'm crazy again. You keep looking at me like I'm crazy.
No, I'm not. No. To be honest, there was a time I think some of the Taiwanese people still embrace some kind of hope that China won't, or at least China will give up some kind of this so-called China dreams, or to annex Taiwan, this kind of ambition. But I think after Xi Jinping took power in 2012, people realized that it is pretty unlikely that China will abandon these ambitions. So we're not naive. We know that the threat is there, and Xi Jinping was this kind of person that have these ambitions, and it's quite clear that he's the one to abandon the term limits of the Chinese leaders. So he really has the kind of ambitions and to change the status quo around the region, and to push to exert their influence into others' democracies.
So after the election, let's play a game. Let's make a pretend game. The President of the United States calls you on the phone. He's like, listen, man, we need to start rethinking some things about Taiwan and China and the Pacific Theater. And what is your advice to us? What should we do? What do you say to the President of the United States?
I think I would suggest that deepening strengthen the cooperation with Taiwan is definitely necessary, not just from the security side, on all fronts. We are now facing, to be honest, the war between Taiwan and China has already started. I mean, not the actual
really?
war, not a physical, like a military war, but on a different.
Unpack that, please.
Yeah, but on different fronts, like you see their infiltration to Taiwanese society. They're conducting the so-called the connected warfares, using disinformation, and trying to buy some local collaborators from Taiwan to cooperate with them, and to amplify certain views to divide the Taiwan's society. That's already happens, and they're cooperating, as I said, they're cooperating with some like local mafia gangsters, to fund them to disrupt the Taiwan's social orders. That's already happened. And their economic coercion to Taiwan has also already happened many times. They're threatening our citizens in China, arrest Taiwanese people in China, and they're
arresting them just under false pretenses. They just arrest them.
Arrest them without like the fair trail.
So as we're talking, I'm thinking to myself, boy, you really have a ruthless, totalitarian, completely amoral, territorial monster whose specter is constantly over you. And I'll answer my own question. If the president of Taiwan ever wanted to meet with me, this is what I would tell him. I would say the only way you can deal with this, the porcupine strategy is great, but you only have asymmetrical warfare. And I would find people and I would do everything that I could to infiltrate China's critical water supply. And I'd be ready to kill an insane number of people if we're ever attacked. Critical water supply, critical infrastructure, nuclear facilities. I would completely take the gloves off. That's what I would, my unsolicited advice or solicited advice.
Yeah.
Now that must seem crazy to you, but when I was a kid, I grew up in Massachusetts, and the state to the north was New Hampshire. And they had on their license plates, live free or die. And there's something about fighting a tyranny that's so relentless that you just have to take the expression to take the gloves off. You just can't be, there's no more Mr. Nice Guy here. But if you let them know that you're doing those things, that's a prelude to attack. So it has to be surreptitious, hearing these ideas from me about developing nuclear weapons, infiltrating critical water supply, asymmetrical warfare, do these make you think I'm some kind of an American hawk, like some type of kind of crazy American?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, I think that's a little bit beyond what people's consensus in Taiwan right now, or at least our cooperation with the U.S. I think Taiwan really cherishes that our relations with the U.S., with Japan, with other partners right now, and we actually work very hard to maintain this trust. So the mutual trust between Taiwan and U.S. and with other partners as well, I think that's a basic foundation for building up the alliance. But so discussing any kind of strategy, I think we really need to look at what's the common foundations we have right now. And currently, I don't think that Taiwanese society really have that kind of understanding or the thinking of we should have acquired some of the capabilities that really can attack the enemy. Yeah.
So one of the things that tells me is that they either downplay the risk, that they don't think there's a much chance of an invasion or blockade, or they downplay the consequences if there were a risk. I don't see any other alternative to those. Or else they would be looking at this as an existential threat and commensurately increasing their defensive capabilities, which includes doing things that are rather unthinkable.
But I think that the way I will put it is that while people understand that there are many different possibilities or different scenarios we should consider, and including if the war really break out, how bloody that would be. So how to deter China from doing that. I think there are many different strategies that we should consider. But on the other hand, I think we also have the understanding of that when we're doing any kind of preparations or to strengthen our capabilities, we also don't want to heighten up the tension somehow for us. Some of the friends in Washington actually will use the phrase that buying time is important for the U.S. and Taiwan and also the other allies. I think not just from Taiwan, but also from the other nations as well around the region, that we require more time to strengthen our own abilities. Yeah.
I've seen a glimpse of that with Hong Kong, and I've seen a glimpse of what authoritarians and totalitarians do around the world. And I know a little bit about Chinese history, and so I'm sure the first order of dissidents, would be lock up dissidents. I understand a little bit of the Cultural Revolution and Mao, and so to me that would be cause for concern. So I have been thinking about, we've all been talking about the civility. We had someone on the show, the civility in Taiwan. We had someone on the show who told us something extraordinary. And that was he made a video of a laptop. He put a laptop in a cafe, and he just put a video recorder on it and different cafes, and nobody stole it. Literally nobody stole it. And to American ears, that's just astonishing. So I'm curious, and I would never ask a question of you that I wouldn't answer myself. So just to be clear, right? So that's fair. Yeah. How can the United States gain some of the civility of Taiwan? How can we gain the cleanliness, people not jumping over the turnstiles for the subways, people treating the commons well, nobody ripping each other off, nobody, you go to the 7-Eleven, you don't have to worry about some maniac coming in. How can we gain some of what you have?
To be honest, that the social structures and social condition, I think that's quite different between the U.S. and Taiwan. You can find out in Taiwan that we still have, the gap between rich and poor, but not that severe. As I understand, is that the gap, the social coverage, as I understand, is not as serious in United States. I think we have been putting a lot of efforts in building up like a commonwealth through a lot of social welfare platforms. We have one of the world's most effective social welfare system, the healthcare systems. Yeah, so we have healthcare systems building in early 2000, and that's very effective. That everyone can access this medical help or support, and we are putting a lot of fundings and helping the elderlies and younger generations. The social welfare budget is actually increasing every year and greatly expanded in these 8 years under DPP's administration. So I think the social condition is a little bit different from
vastly different.
From the United States. So I think maybe one thing, I'm not in a position to suggest what Americans should do, but I think maybe one thing the Americans can think about. But I think when I say this, the context between Taiwan and U.S. is too different. I mean, So, but maybe the U.S. can think about to expand some of the social welfare systems to help the people really need, and to bridge the gap between the social collaboration. Yeah.
That's an astonishing answer to me. Mm-hmm. I don't think any of those things will do any good. Mm-hmm. I was being totally honest with you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so culturally, what can the United States do? We go all around the world, and I'm absolutely fascinated by how people treat the commons. Like, I just find it to be fascinating. Yeah. And people have commented to me on my Instagram why I take so many pictures of bathrooms. And the reason is because you can tell a lot about how a citizenry treats their bathrooms it's a kind of a barometer for the culture. Like So what can citizens do, like, culturally, so that in the United States we don't really treat the commons very well? Mm-hmm. We don't. I mean, just little things like being in a subway system and so many people hopping the turnstiles, or here, many places we go in the world, when you're on a subway, they don't put their ads on the subway behind plastic. There's no trash. Yeah. There's no, like, what can we do culturally to can we import anything that we see here? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I don't really have that answer, but I think the context that Taiwan has, I think, look at our history, that we are a country that had been colonized by a lot of different forces before. For these 400 years, the first colonial power is actually the Netherlands, and Spanish came about at the same time. And the Han Chinese coming later on, and Qing dynasty coming later. And Taiwan, there's a war between China and Japan, and Taiwan becoming a colony of Japan. And I think that changed the whole culture of Taiwan, like embracing diversity and
embracing different kinds of cultural diversity.
Yeah, different kinds of cultural diversity.
We have to pause on this because this is so important. So when you say embracing different kinds of cultural diversity, and I'm going to make a prediction here, not a prediction, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I had Eric Kaufman on the show when I was in London, and he is an American political scientist who lives in the UK. He's a professor.
He's Canadian.
Oh, I'm sorry, he's Canadian. He's Canadian, thank you. See, these guys pay more attention to what we're doing here. And one of the things he said that was just so obvious and so interesting to me is that different groups who come into the UK either contribute to or take away from the coffers more than others. I would bet you and I'm sure viewers will do this. I would bet you, and I would actually bet you with odds. It's just using the UK as just one metric. If you looked at the countries in this region of the world, I would bet you that the people who immigrated to the UK were net contributors to the treasury, to the coffers of the UK. So when you say diversity, you're talking about cultures that have positive contributory aspects to make to the host culture.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wouldn't take, I don't want to name any cultures because I don't want to inflame any people who want to chop my head off or something, but you wouldn't, there are certain cultures from which you would not want to borrow. So you happen to be geographically lucky to be in a region with cultures that are net positive. I mean, the Asian tigers, for example, is a great example.
Yeah, so I understand what you said, that I'm not a socialist, a sociologist, but I do see that, I mean, in different period of time, that Taiwan experienced so many different forces coming to Taiwan. And even after World War II, there was a time that the US and from China, this KMT, are kind of governing Taiwan, but it's actually represented by KMT. I think there are many different legacies. So there was a time that Taiwanese people doesn't really have how to express. It's like there was a time that Taiwanese people relatively is more passive in terms of like deciding their own future, because we have already experienced a lot of different colonial power, and Taiwanese people felt like we would probably never ever to have the position to decide our own fate. But I think it is really after democratization in 1990s that democratization changed the whole culture of understanding and also the identity of Taiwanese. That people start to form a new identity, to understand that how diverse the Taiwanese society is, and how should we embrace everyone rather than to exclude each other. So I think
I mean, so when you say embrace everybody, you're talking about, again, it's just one metric, but you're talking about embracing people who make net contributions to the treasury. You're talking about people who are basically from like the Japanese. I don't know this, I have zero data for this, but I would bet you with odds that the people who come here from Japan, who immigrate here, are responsible for far less crime than the people who immigrate from other countries. I would bet that. I don't have any evidence for that. That's just a speculation based upon vast data that I've seen from okay. So I am fascinated by this idea of diversity. I'm fascinated. I think it's a spell that we're all under, thinking that this is a good thing. I do not think diversity is our strength. I think it's totally fictitious idea. It depends where the diversity comes from. Push back on me.
I understand what you are. What is going to drive it.
If my reasoning is an error or I don't have certain data, let me know.
I should say that while I believe that some of the Taiwanese people will not see in this way, or we try to, like as I say, the Taiwanese society that is a very peaceful, and people have like kind of manners, like don't want to raise a dispute or any kind of conflicts. I saw that tendency, and so when I am sharing this, I think some of Taiwanese people probably won't necessarily agree with me, but I think we experienced the Japanese colonial period. That I think that also slightly changed the Taiwanese culture as well. That during that period of time, I think the cultural impact to Taiwan is huge. And after World War II, when it came to Taiwan, that there's a huge, the comparison of these two, it's always been a topic of our elder generations, like my grandparents' generation. They're always talking about they're kind of miss the time when Japan was in Taiwan and when KMT came.
Really?
But that's my family background. For example, my grandparents, my grandma actually speak only Taiwanese and Japanese.
Oh, wow.
She's been educated under Japanese colonial period, studied elementary school there during that time. But to be honest, I think that Taiwan experienced that and experienced another different type of cultures and the social manners that also inserts some of the ideas and form the Taiwan society nowadays.
Yeah. So throw a curveball question out at you. What do you think of just Taiwan becoming the 51st U.S. state? Wouldn't that solve a lot of the problems with China? It'll bring a lot of other problems. That's unquestionable.
Yeah,
but it would kind of solve the China problem, wouldn't it?
I don't really think so. I think we should think in another way is that Taiwan is already a sovereign independent country, and how the world can help Taiwan to secure this status quo.
Would you be opposed if there were a national referendum here? Would you be opposed to people voting on whether or not they? You looking at me again like I'm insane. But would you be opposed to if there was a national referendum where people could vote to see if they wanted to become the 51st state? Have I offended you by saying that?
No, well, people should have the rights to referendum on any issues. I would say that. Are
you mortified by that idea? Are you horrified by that idea? You seem a little bit horrified.
Well, I am a politician.
Okay.
So that answers that answers everything. Okay. So I think that is well some of the Taiwanese people probably discussed that before, but I do see that I believe the majority of Taiwanese people wants to maintain our own country and
sovereignty.
Yeah, sovereignty. Yeah. So I think people really treasure what we have right now.
I think that's true from what I've seen, yeah.
Yeah, so, our parents, grandparents, they're living under martial law periods, living under authoritarian regime. They've been fighting very hard to gain democracies for their children's or next generations. So people really treasure that. And to be honest, that it's not just the sovereignty issues like it belong to whom, it's how Taiwan can belong to ourselves.
Yeah. That's a very profound answer. So two final things, at least two final things. So in just a couple of sentences, what do you want the people of the United States, Western Europe in general, but the United States in particular, what do you want them to know about Taiwan?
I think I would say that Taiwan is a very unique democracy, as I said, and we really treasure that. And we are now in a very dangerous situation.
What's the danger?
The danger is that you see the tendency of the authoritarian expansionism. You see that the whole trend of the geopolitics right now, the stability and peace status quo is really fragile. And Taiwan is actually standing on the very pivotal part of that equilibrium. So how can the world really maintain that the free world can continue to sustain rather than to decline? I think the world's democracy is really at stake right now. that we see the problems not only threatened, it's not just posed by the authoritarian regimes or authoritarian powers globally, but also you see that from individual democracies, we have a lot of problems need to solve. So we really need to consolidate in the ways to under democratic values and freedom of human rights. Yeah. So Taiwan is in this part, and we devote ourselves into maintaining not just maintaining the peace or stability, but also to strengthen democracy.
Right.
That's a symbol. That's the idea that we uphold, and I hope that the U.S. or people in America can understand that. So we have shared the spirits like the how the United States been built, right? Yeah. And
is there anything? Two more questions. I lied, so not two before now. Two more. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Not really, actually. I think.
You think I did a good job?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think we covered most of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any final question? Is there anything you want to ask me?
Yeah, I'm interested in how you found. I mean, to you, is Taiwan a place that worth to defend from the U.S. perspective?
Okay. I'm always blunt, so I'll be blunt. Yeah. I think that the people here don't recognize a few things about the United States. One, I think that the United States populace is profoundly ignorant. I don't know the percentage of people who could find Taiwan on a map, but I would bet that it's not particularly large. I think that the people here have a sense of, a justified sense, I think it's totally justified, of the semiconductors, the geopolitical, the strategic influence in this theater. I mean, the list goes on and on. I think that the United States is increasingly becoming isolationist, particularly after the catastrophe that was Afghanistan and the recent pullout, leaving $22 billion of equipment there, and people have fatigue, and I'm hoping this answers your question. I don't know if I would be as confident as the people here are that the United States will come to Taiwan's defense in some kind of. So I think that a weird play on a precautionary principle, but I think that some extraordinary measures on the part of Taiwan are essential, but to do so in a way that don't provoke China. But in order to do that, you would have to do what I was thinking before. Like, it really is a kind of dogmatic slumber here, to borrow a phrase from Kant. It's a kind of like, I've spoken to so many people about this, and they said that threat from China has just been looming for so long. Yeah. And if I can give a very disconcerting, extremely disconcerting example, many people, I have a little voice in the back of my head saying, don't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Many people have claimed that the beheading videos are all fake. And the reason they've claimed that they're fake are, why don't the people run away? Why don't the people ever try to get away who are being beheaded? And the reason that they don't try to get away when they're being beheaded is because those maniacs take the people out and pretend to saw their heads off 50 or 60 times. And then unlike, the 60th time, they actually chop their heads off, and the guy doesn't think he's going to get his head sawed off with a rusty butter knife. I kind of see an analogy or a parallel here. Do you see where I'm going with that? Like, I kind of see, and I'm deeply concerned about the consequences of generations of people living under a tyrannical rule here. And because I am concerned about that, it would seem to me that the appropriate proportional response would be not only a military deterrent, but some kind of a prophylactic or some kind of way to protect against that from happening in the first place, given the severity of the consequences. Does that at all make sense?
Yeah, I totally understand that. I totally understand what you were saying.
Yeah.
That, well, I don't think that Taiwanese people are naive to think about that the threat's real or something.
Yeah.
I think people understand that it's looming.
Yeah.
And there's, the possibility of their military actions is getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
I think people understand that. But how to deal with that in a way is that more, as I said, we really need to think strategically and really need to think that how to act, how to say, how to address this issue. It's also kind of an art to, on one hand, prepare, on the other hand, to signify the people, but not frightening the people, or don't let the business or society too worried about that. But on the other hand, you can gradually prepare your capabilities. I think that's a balancing. That's a balance we are looking for. Yeah.
Okay, so back to the civility thing. So I'm still trying to figure this out. So what is the glue that binds the society together? And would you still see social cohesion if, for example, large numbers of unskilled young Muslim men were to come into the country? Would that kind of civility and the kind of lawfulness still exist? Is there what is it that enables the society to function so well here?
I think, as I said, that while the social leverage in Taiwan is not that serious, I think that creates a foundation for these kind of cohesion. But indeed, that if you're looking at the whole spectrum of Taiwan's ethnic groups living in Taiwan, it's somehow relatively not so diverse than what is in the U.S. or other countries, right, or in Europe. That probably is because that we haven't really been a real the so-called. I'm not sure how to frame it. It's like the U.S. we can say it is a very diversified immigrant society. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. Everyone comes from a different part of the world. There are Chinese American, there are Taiwanese American, there are Asian American and Latino American. There are many different groups of people. And the only thing that can bound everyone together is a constitutional rights, basic liberty, and that can bound everyone together. But in Taiwan, but in Taiwan, that the diversity, well, we say diversity, but it's not comparable to what the U.S. Facing. It's a little bit different.
But what if you import large numbers of people who couldn't care less about liberty?
Sorry.
What if you import large numbers of people here who don't care about liberty?
Good question. I never thought about that. So
well, we see it we see it in Western Europe all the time. We spend a lot of time in London, and we saw it there, and just something to think about. Let me throw something out to you. I wrote a piece a while ago about sometimes people get stuck on. I'm not saying this applies to you. I'm saying in general, in critical thinking. Sometimes people get stuck on how to think about a problem or how to think through a problem. And I was thinking about this when I was asking you questions. One thing I think has helped me in my intellectual life is to think, how can I make the problem I'm trying to solve worse? How can I actually bring the end, make it less likely that I can accomplish what I want to accomplish? And if I can figure that out, All I have to do is reverse those things, is literally do the opposite of those things. And so that's when I was asking you about civility and the commons and the subway systems and because it seems to me to be very clear how to destroy civility and social cohesion. All you need to do is look to Western Europe.
Yeah, but I understand. I understand your this hypothesis. There's a total different context.
Yes,
like
context.
people from the.
You are a politician. That's good. Context. That's good. That's good. Yeah, right.
But I think that still I think that the thing can bring everyone together. I mean Taiwan. People are already coming from a lot of different backgrounds. Like in Taiwan, we have
Indonesia.
We have migrant workers from Philippines, from Indonesia, from Thailand, from Vietnam, and from China as well.
Mostly female, though.
I think a lot. If you look at the like a fishing industry, that there's a lot of male workers from different countries. I think that I don't really have the answers. Like
no, it's
how,
okay, and not having answers is completely fine because I didn't give you any questions beforehand. You got no prep. We just winging it. I do think that again from when we've traveled, like when we were in Australia, I was struck. I read something a while ago that I found very surprising. It was by a Kurdish economist who lived in Sweden, and his argument was that young Muslim men are more likely to integrate into the society if they have a skill. And their religiosity, how religious they are, is not a factor for integration. And I was just shocked by that. I simply couldn't believe that. When we were in Australia, I was struck by what a well-functioning, diverse civil society that was. And I think part of the reason, as we looked into it and we explored why, is because when they take immigrants, they have skills. Skills. You have to take immigrants. You cannot take unskilled labor into the country. It's a recipe for catastrophe. Crime, violence. Yeah, go ahead.
But I just there's one thought that coming to my mind. It's like when I was living in London, when I studied there, I live in a neighborhood. It's actually basically a Muslim neighborhood. Yeah. I found that actually there's originally I'm not very familiar with. You can imagine that living in Taiwan, that we seldom have the experience with the people's interactions and all the things. I'm not very familiar with. But when I found living there, I think London is a very big city that embraces all the culture. I would say that everyone's coming from different backgrounds. But I found pretty much easy for me to entering Muslim neighborhoods and talk
as
to
a male.
Them. Yeah, talk to them and even greeting, say hello.
Sure,
as,
I found the same
usual.
thing.
Yeah. So I think, that as a Taiwanese, I think that is probably not a barrier for us to understand or to learn other people's culture. I think that part of the reason is probably coming from, as I said, that the home very long legacy of the colonial period, that from generation to generation, that people already adopted a certain understanding of that, learning how to adopt into a society. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I think that probably is because that we have that kind of history, and that brings us to think in a way or under other people in the ways that maybe we shouldn't have the kind of some kind of projection of the what must be something or what they must be thinking of anything, but like more thinking in the ways that we should know other people first, interact with people first, and to know each other first, then to make a judgment or make a...
That applies to individual people, but not groups of people.
Groups of people. Yeah. But I mean that individual people can be, acting or thinking in this way. That can also represent that the society can also act in this way as well, right? As a collective society that people...
I saw a statistic once of the number of Hmong who live in China in the United States in prison, and if memory serves me correctly, it was just like one. Like one per, like it was something so small, and it just gets me thinking. I've just been thinking a lot about people who participate in various cultures and what they contribute or not to the host societies, and is it rational to have an immigration policy that, for example, again, this is just one metric, but finds people who contribute more to the treasury and say, okay, look, Ashkenazi Jews, they contribute a lot to the treasury. If you're an Ashkenazi Jew, come on in. Because it's just an odds. It's just, it's the likelihood is that those people, because we know the data. But if you say that that's the case, then you also have to say that the opposite is the case, that we're going to find people who take from the treasury and we're going to limit immigration from those places. But because of where you're located, where you're situated in the world, I don't think that's as much of an issue for you. Because I think those people are all high contributors to the treasury. So the diversity issue wouldn't be real diversicity because it would be only from a certain region. I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't have the answer, but I think your observation probably right. But so
it's interesting. My friend Gad Sad said something to me that I thought was just incredibly profound. And he said, if tomorrow, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. He said, if tomorrow the entire country of Vietnam was consumed by a genocidal hatred of Jews, just everybody had a pathological hatred of Jews, just boom, like that. Would it be rational for the United States, Canada, that was the context, he said it, to limit immigration from Vietnam? And the answer is, well, of course. If the whole country was consumed by a genocidal hatred of Taiwanese or anybody, I mean, of course it would be rational. So I think that often people are not talking honestly about immigration because they're afraid to be seen as bigoted, racist, or what have you. I mean, if nothing else, I was wondering the other day, I was wondering if you could, this is a weird thought, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I was wondering if you could have an entire immigration policy based solely on sexual orientation. Like you could just say, anybody who's gay, I know they're looking at me like I'm crazy, but just think about this. Think about this. I bet you, I don't have the data for this, but I bet you that you're looking at me like I'm crazy, but that's fine. I'm going to throw it anyway because people we are not talking honestly about this. We're not talking honestly about who's committing the crimes, where they're from, who's taking the we're just not having honest conversations. My bet to you would be that if you parsed out that data, and I don't know, but I could easily ask Matt Goodwin or what have you, the people who are less likely to commit crimes and more likely to give back to the treasury are homosexuals. I would bet that that's the case. Now, except by fiat that is the case, would it then not be rational to make an immigration policy that accepts far more homosexuals than not? It seemed to me to be the answer is yes. You could have an entire immigration policy based upon the acceptance of homosexuals. If my reasoning is in error, let me know.
Well,
and that way you could avoid any complication for people saying that you don't like people from the Middle East. No, that's not true. We've taken all the gays.
To be honest, that I'm not sure if I understand it right, but as I understand is that, well, if you look at the numbers of crimes being conducted by the immigrant workers or the Taiwanese, like general Taiwanese people, I think there's no significant differences between, the numbers. Like,
Yeah, that's because of where you're located and who you're taking people from a particular part of the world.
But somehow that shapes the environment, right? That shapes the...
And your population rate is decreasing.
Decreasing,
Right.
yeah,
So you're going to
decreasing.
have some kind of immigration.
Yeah.
So would it not then be, I'm just throwing the idea out there, would it not then be a rational calculus to start taking people who are gay?
No, I think that we will think like, Taiwan should have a more comprehensive immigration policy, to be honest. As you said, the populations is shrinking. The low birth rate is happening. We are entering the elder society, aging society. So we really need to look at like a new immigration policy. But I understand that, my understanding is that our position is more like we should invite more people for not just from so-called like a certain group of people that our industry required. We also really need to open up the new opportunities for other people from Europe.
Like gay people in the Middle East.
Yeah, I don't think that people will think in that way. Yeah.
No, but I'm suggesting that you do think in that way. You find people who are discriminated against because of who they are, and you accept them in Taiwan.
Well, I think every society, not just the Taiwanese society, every society, when they are having a new immigration policy, we all need to adopt a certain laws and regulations for like how to help the immigration community to adopt the local culture, the local context. Yeah, we all need to do that, right? But so it doesn't matter whether the people came from, whether their sexual identity or their ethnic background. It doesn't matter where they come from. That the Taiwan society, as a society, you need to provide.
It matters if they're skilled.
Not necessarily the skills, but how to help them to adapt into the local society. That's the work that the government should do, or the society should work together to do.
And you have a linguistic barrier here.
Yeah, we have.
Chinese
we have.
is not, Mandarin is not an easy language.
Yeah, we have. So, but like every country, that to be honest, I spent many years to learn English. Yeah.
Your English is excellent.
No, but it's
It's
actually
better
not,
than Reed's Mandarin.
But I mean, so, but so, anyways, I mean that we really need to look at. Don't think that a society will adopt itself.
Yeah.
It should be the people to be the drivers, right?
Sure.
The drivers to to facilitate and to help any immigration community to relocate to Taiwan. Yeah. So I think that's
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Appreciate
Peter.
your time.
Yeah, thank you.